Hi, I'm Mr. Miyagi and this is Mr. Miyagi's workshop. Well, today we're going to work on replacing the starter solenoid on an old Shovelhead. We're going to upgrade it with, I guess this is a heavy-duty solenoid. This one is probably okay, but it needs to be rebuilt. So we're going to replace it with a new one that I picked up. So let's get to it. So one of the major things you want to do is want to disconnect the ground because we don't want any sparkies. This one's not too bad. It's located underneath my seat. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to tape off these ground points just so I don't get contact anywhere. I just use some old painter's tape to wrap around there to make it a little safer on the ground, just so it doesn't do any contact. Now this one here has a little cover, and if you don't know how to get these off, you rotate them a little bit and slide them off. They just come off here. You also have a rubber cover that you need to take off. It's a little protective one. And then being cold, they don't sometimes move as easy as you want them to. And that'll just come right off of there. All right, so now we're going to disconnect all these points right here. So I'm going to get some wrenches and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to disconnect these. Now this top one here is the power to the battery itself. Sometimes it's a good idea to mark these. So I'm going to mark this with a little red right here. A little plus sign on there, and we'll pull that out of the way. We have a starter wire that we need to take off. This actually goes to the button and the one starter wire, this goes to the starter itself, and that sits out of the way there. Now let's disconnect the solenoid. This solenoid is still good. I just wanted something a little heavier duty. So basically we'll just remove these screws. Now there's a spacer in here that you want to pay attention to. This all just slides apart. There's a couple things going on here that you have to pay attention to. One, this spacer, and apparently I dropped one of the screws down the hole here. This spacer has to come off because you need to put it back on the new one. And on top of the solenoid throw, there's a spring, and you want to make sure that this all stays in place. What's happened is that slides down on this little rod on the inside here. So let's get the new solenoid. Here's the new solenoid. Now I like to clean these up a little bit, wipe them down. So I'm gonna grab a little cleaning rag and also look for the screw that I dropped down inside. All right, I've wiped this down a little bit and I found the screw. And one good thing to do is to have one of these little magnetic magnets here. Telescoping ones work really well. So a quick little tip is to put a bolt on that, move this out, and then make sure you slide that spring on and slide this up in place. And then we'll put the other bolt on. So you want to make sure when you put this all together that you've got this spacer on and you've got the spring located in the right place over the shaft on the plunger. And then we'll screw this together. I actually had a bike come in once that they were having problems with the starter mechanism. And what they forgot to do is put that spacer on, or they lost it, I don't know which. but it makes everything, what happens is it kicked the starter solenoid off to the side and it didn't make things work right. Also, I just kind of like to run these down finger tight and then wiggle that a little bit just to make sure you've got everything seated where it needs to be. And then we'll tighten it up. Now we're going to put everything back together. Starter wire and battery wire and starter button wire. So we got new bolts, or excuse me, new nuts that came with this. So we're going to put those on. Those screw down on there. Oh, yeah, we got that up out of the way. I want to make sure that you still have your rubber in place. That's why I just kind of pushed it off there. Kind of scared myself there for a minute, thinking that I didn't put it back on. So we'll tighten all these down. Now this little guy is a 3/8, and these others are 9/16. So you can see it's not that difficult to change one of these out. Now if you get into the mechanism, that gets a little bit more crazy on what you need to do there. But we didn't actually need to touch that. So we'll just slide this back up there. So what I want to do before we get too carried away here is that I'm going to test this before I put the rubber and everything back on. So that means putting the ground cable back together. Take that off and this all back together. All right, it's all tightened down, out of the way. Let's go try this out. Keys on. Okay, that actually works much better. The other solenoid was a little weak, so I didn't want to throw that plunger in there. That sounded really good. Okay, let's get this back together again. It's the same thing, you're just repeating here, just getting that rubber worked back on there. All right, and then we'll grab the cover. And that slides back up in place, rotates over, good to go. And then of course on this one here, we'll put the seat back on. All right, tighten this down. All right, that was a fairly easy change out for the solenoid. So I hope you like this episode. To me, this is my Christmas Eve, so I'm out here hanging in the shop. And we don't have anything really big planned. We were going to go camping this weekend, but kind of decided against it. The weather isn't as conducive to camping as we wanted to. But that's okay. We've got other things that we've got planned to do for the evening. And some other things I'm going to do tomorrow. Since we're not spending Christmas with the grandkids, they're in Texas and we're in Washington State. So anyway, I hope you've liked this episode on changing out the solenoid. And if you've liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget that ringy-dingy button over there for the next episode coming up. So this is Mr. Miyagi saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's. Hope to see you on the road. You be safe out there. Ciao.